Fact checks about what actually was given to Ukraine. Let's learn that.
What's really going on? Well, I'm going to give you a little primer here. Quick guide to all of this stuff, starting with how much money has been given in terms of aid. There's various different categories of aid. So military aid, that's Europe, 62 billion euros. The US, slightly further ahead, 64 billion euros. Ukraine, there's also other aid. There's humanitarian, there's financial aid. That brings up the European total to about 132, and it's higher than the US, okay? And if you include other things, so the aid that's been promised but hasn't yet been delivered, Europe looks even further ahead.
And that's something I always think about a bit. We live in a world where certain powers and forces want to shift your brain with fake news. You can't deny that. All across social media, your parents, everyone, we're all looking at lies all day, and as Hitler said, the more often you repeat a lie, the more comes the truth. More and more, it's hard to figure out the real news. Something I feel a bit is that you see it often in chat is Europe is dying, Europe is falling apart. Europe is doing f***ing fine. We're doing a good job with Ukraine. We have, I think, the third biggest GDP as the European Union next to China and USA. Who is dying here? Who is dying? The people in Russia that literally can't fucking demonstrate without getting poisoned in the camp? The people in USA where they're led by a fucking retard that puts entire Western security on jeopardy? But we're fucking dying? We're the bad guys here? And that's something I want to like change a bit, and something I want to stand for. We Europeans need to find some balls. You see these Russians, I will die for Russia, I love Russia. America, the Bible, freedom! And we Europeans, oh, fucking refugees, I'm so fucking scared, man, oh my god. We need to find our fucking balls again, man. Make Europe great again. Look in history when they had to fight Hitler, man. You have to suffer a bit. You have to go through something, man. If you look at Ukraine, they're trying to defend their country. You have to suffer. You have to go through pain, and nobody wants to go through it anymore. I just want to be comfortable all the time. Oh my god, I don't want any of this. Time to wake up, man. Life is hard, okay? You have tyrants like Putin and idiots like Trump. And maybe sometimes you gotta stand the up for something in your life and not just chill in your mom's basement playing video games all day. Maybe one time in life you gotta stand up for something. And I want to stand for a Europe, for liberal democratic Europe that stands against this shit and gets its fucking shit together. Will it happen? I don't fucking know, but you gotta start somewhere.
The big picture here, okay, so this includes a lot of different countries. So if we want to get a better sense of comparing different countries and how much they've given, you really need to divide it.
Why are you not fighting in Ukraine right now, idiot? Instant permaban, man. Also, insanity. Am I a soldier? Once again, if we actually help Ukraine, you and me don't have to go fucking fight, man.
Individual countries, not just Europe as a whole, individual countries. And it's clear, the US is comfortably the single biggest donor in cash terms. There you've got the UK,
Cyprus.
down there, and Germany.
They're trying. Why are you not fighting? Well, here's the difference between you and me. Let me show you a little difference between you and me, my little friend. I'm a written down reservist in the German army. Here, my tank medal. If World War III happens, I'm the one that fucking goes. Where you said, Mommy, help, Mommy, I don't want to go, Mommy, I want to play fucking video games.
Economy. And it's a different picture, okay? So same data, but as a percentage of GDP.
Have you seen that stream where I was a tank commander in Hell Loose, where we're crushing it? 60 kills, 1 death.
And look, it's different, okay? So the US...
Will you bond on the front? Benz, you're from Hungary. I probably have to invade you, buddy.
Okay, about 0.5% of their GDP, which is a better way of comparing it, really.
Tommy,
whereas it's countries like
Estonia, Denmark. You see how countries close to Russia are taken more serious. Fucking Denmark, though. Big giga chats.
To get a bit of a historical context here, let's compare how much aid has been given this time around with previous conflicts. So this is specifically US aid to Ukraine this time around. That bar
0.3% of your GDP going to help a country invaded by Putin. And you're fucking bitching about it. Your ancestors stormed Normandy to save the world. And now this is your fucking problem, man? Jesus Christ.
This is World War II. So World War II Lend-Lease far more. US and Korea far more. Vietnam far more. Gulf War far more. Ukraine is tiny in comparison to all of those things. Still, sizable in cash terms, but compared with those...
Do you donate to Ukraine? First of all, that's a really weird question. What if I don't donate to Ukraine? I don't deserve to talk about them. And yes, we collected $6,000 in the beginning of the war here on the stream to Ukrainian refugees. And I was very proud of that day, my dear fucking followers, man. $5,000 from you, $1,000 from me. Very proud of you people for that shit.
So when it comes to these bars, there's been so much debate recently, particularly from Donald Trump, a bit of a conversation with Emmanuel Macron about this, about how much of this European money was actually a loan, so it's going to come back. Some of this money, particularly the financial aid, was structured as a loan.
35, I think 35, yeah. In 2 years, I'm out of the reserve.
After a long period, it's a pretty lax loan, but still,
you're a number in manpower now.
Whereas that's a grant, and that is why Donald Trump is saying, look, we take that money, we need to get something back. Okay, and he says he's done a deal, or at least he's in the process of doing a deal.
And he wanted 500 billion. 500.
With the Ukrainian president, where he thinks that it could be $500 billion back in return for all of that aid given. You're probably wondering at this stage, how on earth do you get $500 billion out of Ukraine? Well, the answer, he says, is rare earths. What are rare earths? They're a
Tommy's
type
part
of
of scrapping
mineral,
the barrel.
mostly used in electronics, in military equipment as well. And there are some rare earths deposits in Ukraine. This is a kind of mineral map of the country. If we zoom into this area here, it's in actually the occupied territory, which is, I think, part of the point here. And the Ukrainians were suggesting this. Old Soviet deposit here supposedly has lots of rare earths.
I am an Obergefreiter. I have 2 stripes.
And you need rare earths.
I am the thing above private first class. Yeah.
Some people have wondered, was he not really talking about critical minerals in general? Maybe he was talking not about rare earths, but about lithium, which technically speaking is a different part of the periodic table. Well, if that's the case, yes, there's a big lithium deposit in Ukraine, potentially the biggest in Europe. But here's the thing, Europe doesn't have that much lithium.
That's my look. I'm not a fucking expert, right? But isn't it clever if the EU and Brussels comes together and it's like, hey, how about we help Ukraine like crazy? How about we get fucking going? We help Ukraine. We get Ukraine in the EU, and then we have access to these deposits, man. The EU needs these minerals, man.
And compare this with other deposits around the world. I've put it over here.
Sheila's lithium god.
And that, by the way, is a best-case scenario. And Ukraine is still a minnow. It's smaller than Canada. It's smaller than the US when it comes to lithium.
You think Ukraine will give it? Easily. What? You're an idiot. If you join the EU, what happens is you get massive investments. You will have an EU fund. That's how the EU works. That's why Turkey loves the EU, for example, but always acts like it doesn't. You get so much funding to build infrastructure, etc., etc. Joining the EU will massively benefit Ukraine. And that's not even like debatable or anything. This fucking notion that I talked about is this notion this one guy in chat had that the EU is like bad and stuff like that, man. All the Balkan wanted to join the EU. The investments, man. The funding of investments, of building you up. The free movement of workers, man. Joining the EU is such a massive fucking advantage to most countries, dude.
After US President Donald Trump signaled that the US would step back from defending Ukraine, France's President Emmanuel Macron and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer flew to meet him in Washington, D.C. But on Friday, a disastrous meeting between Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky left Europe scrambling to come up with a peace plan without the US. Then on Monday evening, Trump announced that the US was suspending military aid to Ukraine, adding yet more urgency to Europe's efforts.
I like how Trump gets the EU so worked up, they finally take over a war that's on their continent and it becomes their problem. That's what I'm hoping historically is going to happen, that Trump's idiocracy wakes Europe the fuck up.
US held peace talks with Russia in Saudi Arabia without Ukraine or Europe's involvement, and Trump's defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, suggested that Ukraine should abandon its NATO bid and concede territory to Russia.
Dude, I'm going to say it. I'm a streamer. You should never listen to me anyway. And as a German, I was never really proud of my country. World War II and stuff. I was never really a guy that like has a German flag up and stuff. But I swear to God, man, you can laugh at me all you want, but it shouldn't be laughable. The Americans did it for 80 years. The Russians did. I am proud of this European flag. That's a flag I look at and I feel something. I feel a challenge. I feel a lot of work, but I feel something that could be so great for all of us, man. We used to fucking kill each other, man. Let's come together. I don't care if you're French, Spanish, or a Balkan thought, man. We have to be brothers. We have to be brothers, man. We have to stop this bullshit in the EU. Fuck the EU with their dumbass politicians and their superiority complexes. So on one hand, we have a Donald Trump, and on the other hand, a Putin, but you are stating the EU has the superiority complex politicians, man.
Trump argued that the revenue from the sale of Ukrainian resources would compensate the US for its previous spending on Ukrainian aid.
Theoretically speaking, I don't understand that. I don't understand that. Imagine you're America, you're Trump, and Zelensky says yes. The war is over, and you have 50% of the minerals. Where does that money go to? First of all, the USA takes money and builds the refining systems, like the mines and stuff. Then you take the resources and sell them on the world market. Then you get that money, but where does that money really end up? In the US Treasury. Okay, that makes sense, I guess. It goes to Israel. Gaza. Trump Gaza.
We should say that he's reliably overstated how much the US has given to Ukraine. Zelensky's meeting with Trump descended into a very ugly, very public argument in which Trump accused Zelensky of being ungrateful for US support and gambling with...
Well, the money will go to the corporations exploiting that stuff and they will pay taxes. And then it goes to the people and infrastructure. if they pay the taxes.
Zelensky was then reportedly asked to leave the White House, with the US-Ukraine relationship in tatters and no deal signed. On Sunday, Starmer hosted 18 world leaders, mainly from Europe, but also...
Let me just try real quick. Scholz, look at him. He's like, I'm done. I'm dead. Scholz, von der Leyen, corrupt. Macron, new UK guy, forgot his name. Polish guy who looks like an orc. Meloni, Trudeau, who didn't he lose an election or something? That's it. I think that's Slovakia.
Also including Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan. The talks led to a vague outline of a European peace deal for Ukraine, with 4 main points. These were to continue to provide military support to Ukraine and increase economic pressure on Russia, that Ukraine must be present at any peace talks, that Ukraine's defense capabilities must be boosted to deter further Russian aggression, and that a coalition of the willing will be formed to defend a peace deal in Ukraine.
Sounds not bad.
Now, at this point, it's not 100% clear who this will include, but it will be led by France and the...
Do you hear it? The coalition of the willing? Deutschland, mein Herz in Flammen, hier kommt die Sonne. What?
The UK, and will probably include the Baltic states, Finland, and Canada.
Find
Conversely,
your
Poland and Spain have both ruled out committing troops to Ukraine, so presumably won't be included. Perhaps the big question here is whether Germany will join in. Well, Germany was generally pretty cautious about its
Get the
support
fuck
for
out. We have a new chancellor who says a lot. Will he do it though?
The big question here is how Europe is actually going to pay for all of this. Even for those countries that aren't in this so-called coalition of the willing, filling the void left by the US and increasing defense spending to...
US just right now turned off intelligence sharing of their satellites, so Ukraine can't target Russian targets anymore.
Different plans in place. Germany, for instance, is considering... France, Germany, the UK and others are discussing a proposal to seize 200 billion euros of frozen Russian central bank assets for Ukraine, with French officials suggesting that Europe seize the assets if Moscow violates a future ceasefire deal in Ukraine. The second proposal, announced on Tuesday morning by the EU, is the Rearm Europe initiative, which basically involves borrowing
It's been 3 years, man. What the fuck is this? Rearm Europe. 3 years ago, man.
This is a pretty dramatic move. The EU already owes about 300 billion euros in money it borrowed to help member states through the pandemic, with no plan of how to pay it back. So borrowing more money will only make that problem more acute. Thursday, the EU will hold a summit in Brussels, where EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says that she'll present a comprehensive defense plan. Given that Trump has suspended aid to Ukraine, EU leaders will be working as quickly as possible to come up with a military support plan. Russia has also ruled out a role for European peacekeeping troops after a peace deal, and argues that Europe's continued military support for Ukraine is a sign that Europe doesn't...
Have a great day.
That's how Hitler would have talked. That's exactly how the Nazis would have talked.
Zelensky says that he still wants to sign Trump's mineral. This would likely involve Zelensky apologizing to Trump for, in Trump's words, disrespecting...
Fuck, Alter. I feel so bad for Zelensky. To me, the biggest personality of this decade, of this century even. Imagine you want to protect your country and you need to suck up to a man-child like this. Something happened in Germany yesterday. I didn't pay any attention though. No idea. Zelensky is a dumbass for thinking he can reason with Trump. Zelensky probably should have sucked his dick a bit more. But what can you do as Zelensky? You can't give away 500 billion and 50% of minerals. The fuck? You only got 140 billion. Maybe he should have worn a Trump t-shirt or something.
Friedrich Merz and his prospective coalition partners have agreed to raise hundreds of billions of euros to boost defense and infrastructure.
But I always, what does that mean? 3 years ago, Olaf Scholz said we're doing 100 billion into German defense. Nothing ever happened. No one, what even happened?
Merz said the measure was urgent in the wake of the United States pausing military aid to Ukraine. He also said he hoped the outgoing parliament would vote on the required motion for the funding increase next week already.
Oh, he wants the current government that is still in office to stop the Schuldenbremse, which is a law to make no more debt, which makes sense. It makes sense to not go into debt anymore. Unfortunately, it looks like the geopolitical situation in the world has changed so drastically, where the USA is leaving Europe, Putin is invading Ukraine. You kind of have to go into debt a little bit, unfortunately.
That Europe, and with it Germany, must now make very large efforts very quickly to strengthen the defense of the country and of Europe. We trust that the USA will continue to stand by our mutual alliance commitments in the future. We also know that the resources for our national and alliance defense must be significantly expanded.
Merz is not a Scholz. Look, here's how I think. There's a lot of negativity in Germany. Nothing will change. This guy's gonna do nothing. Nothing. And I understand that. Germany has always been like this. Nothing ever changes. But I feel like that's like laying on the ground like a jiu-jitsu bitch and doing nothing. We have to have a little bit of hope. I want to give this guy some hope for 2 years. Maybe something is gonna happen. He talks very pro-Ukraine. Would you imagine Hitler never happened? Germany stayed strong. We keep our territories. We're a strong economy. Don't get bombed to shit. Putin comes for Ukraine, man. We can handle this shit, man. We don't need no fucking Trump. Sorry, man. Sometimes it's my DNA, okay? It's my DNA. Sometimes I'm a little bit... Sometimes I think if I was a democratically elected leader in Europe, like 4 years, right? You can so easily fuck the voters. The election is coming in a year, so you're like this. Hey, guys, I'm gonna take a massive loan and invest a lot. I'm building a military for Ukraine. I'm building infrastructure. It's gonna be great. And then the idiot voters vote for you, and you're back in office. But the interest of the loan is killing the country. But they're too dumb to understand that. And you're just like, haha, yeah, I did really great things. U.S. economy is having trouble.
For most of the past few years, America's economy has been the envy of the developed world. The US has enjoyed better GDP.
I have a weird question I don't know much about. Why is the US economy so much better than Europe's? Aren't we kind of like very equal in our culture and stuff like that? Is it the oil they have, or lots of arable land, low taxes, low regulation? They never made like a big minimum wage. They don't really have unions. So like a capitalist paradise where fuck the rights of people, we're just gonna produce.
Suddenly, the American economy
More
has
construction
started
speed.
to look a bit shaky. Consumer confidence has apparently plummeted, the trade deficit is widening, and inflation is looking dangerously sticky.
The president who said he's going to stop the trade deficit is widening the trade deficit?
The latest GDP Now forecast, a real-time estimate of GDP maintained by the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, suggests that year-on-year US GDP is on track to shrink by an astonishing 2.8% in the first quarter. So, let's just get straight into it. Explain why the Atlanta Fed thinks that the US is on the brink of a recession, if not in one already. In short, GDP is usually defined as the sum of 4 components: consumer spending, private sector.
Okay, I never understood that in my life. GDP is consumer spending, private sector investment, government spending, and that, okay.
Have declined recently. The biggest drop has apparently been in net exports, which is defined as exports minus imports. This is largely because the US has seen a steep increase in imports, presumably as a consequence of what's known as front-loading. Essentially, businesses are anticipating more tariffs in the future, so they're importing all the stuff that they need now, i.e. front-loading, before the tariffs kick in. This has all been exacerbated by the strength of the dollar at the moment, which has risen as investors expect tariffs to both invite further interest rate hikes and cripple other currencies, which has allowed the US to import more stuff. Now, to be fair, this is sort of what you'd expect before tariffs come into place, so it's not necessarily something that the current administration should really worry about. The other big thing in their data is the collapse of consumer spending, which was previously really quite strong in the US and had probably been
Why would that collapse? I don't understand.
the main reason that the US outperformed other developed economies over
This is a Victoria Free tutorial video.
According to Atlanta Fed's latest estimate, year-on-year consumer
Honestly though, without memeing, be honest, Americans in the chat. Thank you, Igor Games. A carton with 6 eggs in it. Maybe even organic. How much money is that? $6? Nah. It's really $8? Nah, I don't believe you. $4? 6 to 8 is insane. I think I pay €2. 3 euros. €3.19? That's what I buy. Organic though.
spending growth is basically zero, down from about 2% last year. This is consistent with other data we've seen from the University of Michigan and the Conference Board, who run the 2 most popular surveys of consumer sentiment in the US, largely because consumers' inflation expectations, i.e. how much they expect prices to rise over the next 5 years, are currently the highest they've been since 1995.
Since the beginning of 2025, the prices of eggs has increased by 40%. What is your country? What? Why? Okay, the bird flu happened. Weather conditions, geopolitical factors. Don't forget global warming will have a big part in that stuff. Labor shortages. I'm sorry if I sound like a libtard, man, but you probably have a lot of illegal immigrants working in that sector. Higher fuel and energy costs have increased expenses. Higher demand around the holiday. Some states have implemented new animal welfare laws requiring more space for hens, leading to higher production. So far, everything Trump said he will do didn't really happen. The economy doesn't look better. The trade deficit is rising. The Ukraine war is not finished. He even destroyed the Western alliances. What actually did he do well so far? State thinks Trump was successful yet in his term. I know this is a very polemic question, very superficial. Oh, he's thinking... What the fuck? That's the longest loading ever. That was the longest load I've ever had. No. I mean his. Oh, I'm not Plus member. I don't get stuff after 2020. It doesn't give me new information because I need to pay for it. To be fair, it's in office 1 month. To be fair, he said he will change things very radically, like 24 hours, and Ukraine is over.
What makes all of this
Just
even
use
more
DeepSeek.
precarious is that an ever-increasing fraction of consumer spending is being driven by the richest Americans. According to analysis by Moody's, the top 10% of earners now account for an unprecedented 50% of consumer.
My point is just, look, I'm not the greatest genius ever, chat. Is the biggest problem we have in the world transgender people? Is it the woke mind virus? Or is it that 10% of Americans spend 50% of the consumer spending? Is that maybe something we shall talk about? Or am I just a woke communist? At this point, you need the rich or your economy falls apart because nobody buys yachts anymore.
This implies that 90% of Americans are already basically in a recession.
And that's something I like to talk about sometimes, right? Again, maybe I'm wrong here. Help me if I'm wrong. I think what's happening in the world right now, and for some years, is a distortion of the stats that are shown to us. You look at the news and they talk to you about inflation is going down, the GDP is rising, Germany is 0.3% growth, and you have all these numbers. But in reality, in the reality of 90% of people, of you, the basic workers, right? None of this fucking matters. You care if you can pay your rent and your groceries. Who wins if GDP rises? The 10%. Who wins if a country grows? Mostly the fucking owners of the companies, man. You have all these numbers flowing around, man. But the main number is you are getting fucked. You're getting fucked in the ass, bro.
It means that the stock market actually really matters. Usually when people say that...
Also, when you look at the news and the stock market is growing, we're having a lot of growth here. Does fucking Erica, the cleaning lady, have anything with it? Does John the plumber have great fucking gains from the stock market going up 5%?
Stock market isn't the real economy, they're right. But when the richest Americans are keeping the American economy afloat, the stock market does sort of become...
That's interesting though, because you create this trap in capitalism, where then the rich are so important that without them your whole economy crashes.
Because rich Americans hold a lot more money in stocks, which means that stock market declines, like the ones we've seen recently, are more likely to discourage them from spending, potentially pushing the US into a recession.
Wait, the S&P went down like this, really? Again, this is media panic, right? Let me show you panic, chat. Let me make you panic. Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god, guys! Oh! Okay, guys. It's gonna be fine. Okay.
This has also shown up in polling, because while Trump's net approval numbers aren't appalling, his economic numbers, which used to be a strong point for him, are actually pretty terrible. Gallup just registered Trump's worst ever net approval rating for his handling of the economy at -12, while Ipsos found that it had fallen from +4 in January to -8.
Good job electing that guy. Good job, people. That's not me saying it. That's the fucking voters saying it. It went down by 12%.
This brings us nicely to another major issue. Inflation. Year-on-year inflation has actually risen quite steadily from its September low of 2.4% to 3% in January. And
that's why I believe, I'm just yapping a bit. If I ever want to invest my money in the future, it will always be real estate. Let me explain. Look, stocks are cool. I really like stocks. They're like a great thing, man. If I buy a stock in Germany, and if I sell the stock, I get taxed 25%, maybe even more one day, right? If I make $1,000 with stocks, they take 250 euros. An apartment, which obviously, yeah, it's much, a stock is maybe $100, an apartment is $500,000. It's different, right? Listen to this again. This is a true story. I never knew this. If you sell an apartment in Germany after a 10-year waiting period, you sell it without any taxes. Are you fucking listening to me?
By making imports more expensive. This will probably require further interest rate hikes from the Federal Reserve, or at least fewer cuts, which might explain why Trump's team, including Elon Musk, have started taking shots at the Fed. The final thing we want to mention is the national debt. And this was always a risk with Trump. After all, during the campaign, he said that he wanted tax cuts without committing to any significant spending reductions to match them. There was some hope that maybe Doge would be able to find sufficient savings to keep things balanced, but this really no longer looks plausible. Doge's own figures admit that they've only saved a few $1 billion, which is negligible in the context of a $7 trillion budget.
Thanks, Elon. Thank you. We can't wait to buy the Cybertruck.
Well, US borrowing costs have actually stayed pretty low recently. This is mainly because investors are anticipating economic turmoil and buying up treasuries as a safe asset. And assuming that the US can't borrow infinite amounts of money,
they fired all these
ultimately
people.
Unsustainable.
Man.
All in all, while it's probably too early to say anything.
Sometimes I don't know if I'm correct, man, but this feels like a bit of the downfall of an empire. Maybe I'm going too far. America is still ultra strong, but it looks like the first cracks are showing now, where they came out of World War II as the gods of capitalism, and now it's like, but you still have to show respect. America is still a superpower, man. Last video, why does Trump want to normalize relations with Russia? But then that's enough politics for today, man. Blah. What scares me about China is how quiet they are. There's no scandals. Xi Jinping is not running around like an idiot doing dumb shit that gets viral on TikTok. They're just fucking quietly lurking in the back. Getting fucking ready, man. Getting stronger and stronger.
Trump and Vance
watching us fuck
spent
each
most
other.
of February insulting Zelensky as an unpopular dictator, pushing Ukraine into an extractive minerals deal, and flattering
nothing to
President
win.
Vladimir Putin. Last month, for instance, Trump said he trusted Putin, believed Putin wants peace, and claimed Ukraine started the war.
Dude, how is that man allowed to... Dude, that guy should be ousted, man. Should be fucking dragged into the streets, bro.
First, it was possible to explain this apparent friendliness as part of Trump's push for peace. After all, it's hard to do a deal between Ukraine and Russia without first getting...
We're gonna go for Siberia. We're gonna take it. I walked into Russia and said, wow, Siberia is gonna be our state.
And it looked like this flattery might be part of Trump's plan to charm the Russian president into talk. At last month's UN General Assembly meeting, for instance, the US voted with Russia against a European resolution calling for an end to the war and the withdrawal of Russian troops from Ukraine. And a couple of days ago, his administration ordered US Cyber Command to stand down from all planning against Russia.
And 1 hour ago, they turned off satellite support for the Ukrainian army. If you believe in the conspiracy theory that Donald Trump is a Russian agent, everything suddenly makes so much sense. Hello, Comrade Krasnov.
Thank you for helping me when I was almost bankrupt in the 80s. Thank you.
Could you imagine? I mean, we're just memeing. Could you imagine Russia planted Trump? Could you imagine? That would be the greatest intelligence feat in human history.
Aside from peace in Ukraine, there were at least 3 other things that could be motivating Trump's pivot towards Russia. The first is the potential economic benefits to normalization between the US and Russia. This is something Trump has talked about explicitly. In late February, for instance, Trump posted on Truth Social that he was talking to Putin about, quote, major economic development transactions between the United States and Russia. Similarly, after the meeting between US and Russian officials in Saudi Arabia last month, Secretary of State Marco Rubio claimed that America had, quote, an incredible opportunity to partner with the Russians economically.
You had an incredible opportunity to partner with Trump after what he did to you in 2017.
An end to the war would be, quote, the key that unlocks the door for potentially historic economic partnerships. Russia has been more than happy to entertain this idea. In February, Putin offered to cooperate with the US on extracting minerals from Russian-occupied areas of Ukraine.
What I actually think Trump really wants is Trump wants to look like a winner. That's his character. I don't even blame him for that. It's just a human being. And he is willing to go any path that it needs to be a winner. He needs that peace in Ukraine. Even if it's a bad peace for Ukraine, the American voter is not intelligent enough or cares enough to give a shit. I made peace, I'm a president of peace, even though it's a terrible peace. No one cares though. He did peace. He just wants to look like a winner, and it means possible.
In Russia,
even if it means working with Adolf Hitler.
We have no idea how Russia worked out this $324 billion figure. And it sounds implausibly high. The Financial Times, for instance, put the real number closer to $50 billion. This is probably because this $324 billion figure reportedly includes, quote, foregone profits. In other words, it includes estimates of how much American companies would have made had they stayed in Russia. And the Russians have presumably used some pretty optimistic estimates to catch Trump's eye. On top of that, the Russian economy really doesn't have that much to offer the US. Russia mainly produces oil and military equipment at the moment, neither of which the US really needs. The US already has a domestic oil supply, as well as more reliable supply from neighbouring countries like Canada, and the biggest military-industrial complex in the world. While there's probably some opportunity in developing Russia's vast mineral and energy deposits, these sectors are dominated by oligarch-owned companies with close links to the Kremlin. Given A, the fragile state of the Russian economy at the moment, B, the fact that the Kremlin has recently taken to expropriating private assets to pay for the war, and C, the dramatic instability in US-Russia relations. It's also hard to square this with Trump's policy towards Canada or the EU, who have a combined GDP at least 10 times that of Russia and do a lot more trade with America. If Trump wants trade-induced prosperity, he'd be better off avoiding a trade war with America's closest trading partners.
Or he's a Russian agent.
Anyway, the second reason we can see for Trump's Russia
I'm
pivot
tired of politics
is
now. After this video,
trust.
we're done. I like what you're saying here, Urchin. Trump wants to be the hero in the story, right? Wouldn't he be more of a hero if he just fully supported Ukraine? Yeah. But you saw that video when they talked to Zelensky. They're just children. They're like little imbeciles, man. Another great argument that he is a Russian agent.
The final theory worth mentioning is that Trump is pulling what's become known as a reverse Kissinger. In other words, that he's buddying up to Russia to try to peel them away from China, or at least prevent an anti-American.
That's also something I think that makes a lot of sense. That he's like, I need Russia versus China or some shit. But then again, I feel like selling out the Ukrainian state because of that.
His team have occasionally alluded to this idea. Last month, J.D. Vance argued it was, quote, ridiculous for America to push Russia into the hands of the Chinese. Said that...
Man, isn't it crazy how all of this world history we see lazy is all because Ukraine held? How different would the universe look if he took Ukraine in 3 days? How different will that all look? And that's why I say this all the time on the stream. I'll say it again. You and me, my friends, you and me owe so much to Ukraine. We're fucking lucky that we have these people. Very, very lucky.